The death of the petrodollar. As a 50-year cheat code breaks down, the magic is gone. Stop for a second and think. Imagine you walk into a burger place in your neighborhood. You're buying bread, meat, and lettuce separately. Healthy, right? Yeah. But let's be honest, it's a burger. Normal day. You get to the counter. The cashier is chewing gum and staring at you. You pull out that famous $20 bill from your pocket. The one you've handed over for years without even looking at it. Your definition of money. The cashier looks at the bill, then looks at you. For a moment, it turns into a Turkish drama scene. That look says, "Dude, seriously?" And in the calmest voice possible, they go, "Sorry, we don't accept these anymore." I know, it sounds like a post-apocalyptic movie. One of those scenes you'd say, that would never happen to us. But here's the punch-in-the-face truth. That paper is not money because it's naturally valuable. It's money because people agree to treat it like it's valuable. And the thing that kept that belief standing was an agreement made 50 years ago that basically said, energy will be bought with dollars, period. Today I'm going to talk, without making it painfully boring, about how that agreement was built, how it was protected, and why it started cracking. Secret deal, financial pressure, regimes punished for using the wrong currency, and the cracks that have piled onto the system in recent years. This might be the biggest financial rigged game in history. And yes, if this system collapses, it's not just grocery price tags going up. Money itself becomes something people start arguing about. You're about to witness the slow and painful death of the petrodollar. 1974. This table saved America. This story doesn't start in New York or Washington. July 1974, Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Humid, hot morning. America at the time? Let's politely say, not great. The golden age vibes of the 1950s were gone. Vietnam had messed up the whole system. Nixon was cornered in Watergate and heading for resignation. But the real crisis was more dangerous than politics, money. Because in 1971, Nixon basically told the world, your dollars can no longer be exchanged for gold. Until then, the system was simple. Bretton Woods. Every dollar was like a lover tied to Fort Knox gold. But the US printed money like a maniac. Especially for Vietnam and social programs, and countries led by France started saying, all right then, give us the gold, dude. And then the real bomb dropped. There was no gold. When Nixon shut the gold window, he basically kicked the stool out from under the dollar. Inflation rose. Trust shook. Then the 1973 oil embargo hit. Arab countries cut the oil taps because of support for Israel. Gas prices multiplied. People waited for hours in lines. The stock market crashed. America felt one thing. I think I'm losing control. And that's when one man enters the scene. William Simon. Most people go, who? But he may have been the guy who wrote the insurance policy for the American empire. Simon was the new Treasury Secretary, but his real world wasn't diplomacy. It was bonds, debt, markets, panic. That was his natural habitat. Nixon sends him on a Europe plus Middle East tour. But this wasn't a normal diplomatic trip. The mission was simple. Don't come back empty-handed. Coming back empty-handed meant showing up to the dollar's funeral in black sunglasses. Simon goes to Jeddah with a small team. He sits down with the Saudi royal family and lays out his offer, with some belly dancers, camels, and desert heat in the background. This offer wasn't romantic. It was pure interest. You could call it a security contract. Clause 1. The U.S. guarantees the security of the Saudi monarchy. I'll sell you weapons. I'll give you intel. I'll be your protective shield. Because Saudi Arabia's neighborhood isn't exactly safe. Iran, Iraq, Soviet influence. Being alone there is like being stuck in the desert with no water. Clause 2. Saudi oil will be priced only in dollars. No mark, no yen, no gold. Oil equals dollars. That tiny detail changes everything. Because it means Japan wants energy? Bring dollars. Germany wants energy? Dollars. France wants energy? You're finding dollars too. The world becomes addicted to dollars like a burger needs a cola. But the third clause? That's the real cheat code. Saudi Arabia will sell oil and earn trillions in dollars. What are they going to do with that much cash in the desert? Simon says, you'll take that money and invest it back into America, specifically U.S. Treasury bonds. So the world hunts dollars, buys oil, dollars flow to Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia uses those dollars to buy U.S. debt. It becomes a loop. America keeps printing dollars. The world somehow gets dollars, buys oil, dollars come back to finance U.S. debt. America borrows easily like a teenager with a high-limit credit card. Spends more. That saved America's checkbook. And it allowed Americans to consume more than they produced for decades. But there's a problem. The Saudis are paranoid. Because if the Arab world finds out, wait, we're financing America's debt, that becomes a serious survival problem inside the kingdom. So the agreement had to look like it didn't exist. Simon creates a special channel inside the US debt auction system. A clean, invisible path that doesn't draw public attention. For years, nobody really knew the full size of this system. Only in 2016 did some numbers get forced into the open. That's how the petrodollar was born. 2. So the dollar became the world's money. How? Lock this into your brain. Because people think the petrodollar is like we live in a simulation or UFOs are real-level conspiracy. No, it's simpler. Mechanics. Don't think like a typical American. Think like the finance minister of a developing country. Yeah, I know, not easy. Let's call your country the Republic of Hard Work. It's 1985. Your country is growing. Factories are opening. Production is booming. But you have one problem. No oil. And without oil, no electricity, no logistics, no production, no social stability. So you have to buy oil. You call Saudi Arabia, I want 1 million barrels. They ask, do you want the large size for $500 million extra? You say no thanks. You offer to pay in your local currency. They laugh, but not with their mouth. They just say one word, dollars. So now your country has one mission, get dollars. But only the US has the right to print dollars. So what do? You sell goods to America. Your people wake up at 5 a.m. and because two guys at a table linked oil to dollars, they sew t-shirts, assemble electronics, grow fruits and vegetables. Real labor, real time, real resources. You load those goods onto ships and send them to America. America gives you dollars in return. Printing dollars costs almost nothing, but what those dollars buy is very real. Then you send those dollars to your oil suppliers. And the oil producer invests those dollars into US Treasury bonds. So America's borrowing stays cheap. That's why America could spend for years, run massive budget deficits, fund wars, keep a welfare state, live happily on cheap imports because the dollar was the world's money and the world was forced to hold it. But there was a nasty side effect. Because the dollar was kept artificially strong, American production became naturally expensive. A factory in Ohio couldn't compete with Vietnam. The industrial base hollowed out. America started producing more debt than goods. In other words, the petrodollar system financialized the US economy. For years, nobody even dared to seriously challenge this. Because two things kept it alive: energy demand, security power. And yes, we'll talk about the military side too. But today, the main topic is money. 3. The heart of the system, mutual trust. The petrodollar is less of a contract and more of a belief system. It depends on this. The US pays its debts nicely, the dollar keeps its value. The US doesn't use the system like a weapon, hopefully, and that third point eventually became real. The US started using finance like a weapon. Who gets to use money? Who stays on SWIFT? Whose reserves get seized? And that's when an alarm went off worldwide. Dude, this money isn't actually my money. It's a permission slip. If the permission gets revoked, the money gets revoked too. That's when the cracks started spreading faster, and two names are often seen as the first big warning shots: Saddam and Gaddafi. 4. Saddam's wrong currency mistake. When I say Iraq war, what comes to mind? Weapons of mass destruction, speeches at the UN anthrax vial, yellow cake uranium. All of that is part of the story. But let's open another window. November 2000. Saddam leans back and says, I'm not selling my oil in dollars anymore. Bring euros. Back then the euro was new. People mocked it. This is supposed to be a rival to the dollar? But then, of course, the euro rises, and Saddam ends up earning more by pricing oil in euros. Now Washington's nightmare becomes, if Iraq did it, OPEC can do it too. If OPEC does the same, demand for dollars and US treasuries drops. America's infinite borrowing privilege gets shaken. And the timeline lines up in an almost ironic perfect way. 2000, euro announcement 2001 to 2002. Euro rises 2002. Regime change talk ramps up hard. 2003, invasion. And after the invasion, what's the first economic move? Iraq's oil gets switched back to the dollar. This alone might not be the reason, sure. But in geopolitics, you follow the smell of money. This story teaches one thing. If you seriously challenge the dollar monopoly, If you anger the school bully, the street corner price can be heavy. 5. Gaddafi and the gold dinar. Saddam tried changing the currency of oil. Gaddafi went further. I have an amazing idea. Let's change the currency of all Africa. The plan: a gold-backed Pan-African currency, the gold dinar. Libya had serious gold reserves, and Gaddafi wrapped it in the dream of a United States of Africa. And that's where France's red line shows up. The CFA franc system. Monetary influence built through old colonies. The gold dinar challenged that system. 2011 intervention in Libya. Gaddafi's death. Gold disappearing. And today Libya is called a failed state. The message to the world was, alternative currency ideas are imaginable, but risky. But even that message didn't save the system forever, because in 2022, something happened that accelerated everything. 6. 2022, finance gets weaponized and backfires. When Russia entered Ukraine, the West used the financial nuclear option, kicking banks off SWIFT, freezing central bank reserves. And the second one hit hard, shockwave level, because we used to think central bank reserves were untouchable. Nearly $300 billion got frozen. That left one sentence in every country's head. So if I fall, they can kick me too. My reserves can be frozen too. At that moment, the image of the dollar as a neutral plumbing system popped like a balloon. Russia pivoted, demanded ruble payments, built alternative systems, did dollar-free trade with China, sold cheap oil to India, and suddenly the idea became mainstream. Wait, living without the dollar isn't that impossible? And that's when China enters the room like John Wick. 7. Petro-yuan, China's exit door. Remember this, China is the world's biggest oil importer. For years it lived with a paradox. I have to buy energy with my rival's currency. China wants to buy oil in yuan, but producers don't want yuan. Because if you take yuan, you can't freely move it out of China. So China's smart move: yuan-priced oil futures plus a gold connection. Meaning, producers take yuan and can convert it to gold. It bypasses the dollar system. Clever, you have to admit. And for producers, it creates an exit door. I took yuan, but I converted it to gold. That makes it easier for oil exporters to move away from the dollar. 8. The Saudis and the divorce. That 1974 marriage isn't what it used to be. The MBS era. U.S. attitude, weapons limits, political tension. The Saudis don't want to be tied to one side anymore. Relations with China grow. And the biggest Saudi message is this: we don't have to sell only in dollars anymore. I don't love you like I used to. That single sentence can crack markets, because Saudi Arabia is basically the central bank of oil. If Saudi opens the door beyond the dollar, others follow. 9. BRICS and the Global South revolt. BRICS grows. Energy producers join. By PPP numbers, BRICS weight pressures the G7. The shared motivation: we're tired of the dollar being used as a weapon. New financial channels, new banks, new payment systems. The dollar's advantage as the one network starts losing its charisma too. 10. Debt bomb, $35 trillion. And here's the most critical thing: the biggest threat to the dollar isn't outside, it's inside. $35 trillion in debt. Even imagining that number is exhausting. Way too much money. As rates rise, interest payments explode. At some point, interest payments surpass the defense budget. That's not sustainable. A state has 3 options. A. Default. B. Austerity. C. Inflate it away. History doesn't lie. States usually choose option C, meaning reduce the debt quietly by reducing the value of money. 11. If dollars come home. For years, America's biggest export was inflation. Dollars spread around the world like a virus. But if trust breaks and dollars start returning, those dollars try to buy goods inside the U.S., and the U.S. doesn't produce enough goods. Maybe that's part of why obesity is so high. We've been too comfortable. Prices explode. That's the most dangerous scenario. The dollar returns like a boomerang. 12. Gold's revenge. Central banks have been buying gold for years. This is real. Countries like China, India, Turkey diversify reserves. Gold is the only asset that is nobody else's liability. As trust in the dollar system drops, gold benefits. 13. Pax Americana and the cost of the army. The petrodollar isn't just grocery prices, it's the fuel source of U.S. military power. If the subsidy fades, is global military expansion sustainable? Probably not. Like Britain's Suez moment. If the checkbook disappears, the empire shrinks. 14. A multipolar currency world. The new world may not depend on a single currency. A dollar block, a euro block, a BRICS block, trade becomes more expensive, slower, more political. Globalization used to be a highway with no brakes. Now it turns into toll roads. Yes, I'm congratulating myself. That's a good metaphor. 15. Outro. Let's be clear. The petrodollar might not be in a "we lost the patient" moment tomorrow, but it's no longer the only option. And in finance, when the monopoly breaks, the charisma of the one holding power breaks too. This video isn't here to write a doomsday scenario. It's here to understand how the system works. Because if you understand the rules, you don't panic. And panic only locks the situation up even tighter. If you found this deep dive valuable, hit the like button. These long topics aren't the algorithm's favorite. You know that. But if people watch, YouTube has no choice. I tried to make it as non-boring as possible. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't lose your curiosity, and I'll keep blowing your mind.